Our first story tonight, the 12th General Assembly of West Africa Power Pool in Africa is open in Accra. Representatives of various member countries pledged their commitment to establish a regional energy market that will secure the future of electricity supply in the sub-region. President Akufo-Addo, who hosted the session, called for a regional approach to tackle the challenges in the energy sector. Here's more in this report.
The West Africa Power Pool is an annual gathering of energy institutions and agencies across the West African sub-region. The aim is to seek solutions to the prevailing energy crisis in the region. Speaking at this year's General Assembly, which is taking place in Accra, President Akufo-Addo called on African leaders to realign economic policies to ensure a booming electricity network in West Africa. According to him, the rapid economic boom of West African countries will require a doubling of investment in the energy sector.
Most West African countries, the annual growth in demand for electricity is estimated at 10%. This means that for every 7 years, we need to double our investment in electricity infrastructure. Investment in the energy sector has been termed as impact investment, in that it ensures the delivery of financial and social returns that have the potential to address important challenges, such as reduction of poverty and improvement of the lives of people. In West Africa, fortunately, through the ECOWAS Energy Protocol, efforts have been made to resolve the regulatory and political barriers constraining investment in an electricity supply and inadequate infrastructure along the electricity value chain. Heads of state and government of ECOWAS, through the Supplementary Act, decided most of the regional power generation facilities should be developed by PWAP through special purpose vehicles under the PPP framework.
On his part, the Energy Minister, Boakye Ejako, was hopeful Ghana would be joining the rest of Africa for a common regional electricity market by 2019.
Ghana is honored to have been selected during the 11th General Assembly held in Ouagadougou in 2016 to host this event, which brings together renowned experts in the electricity sector in West Africa, international funding agencies, and the donor community to address issues relating to the common enterprise of establishing a regional electricity market by 2019. The theme for the 12th General Assembly is Regional Electricity Market Ensuring West Africa Integration. This is in line with a vision of WAP, which is integrate the regional power systems into a unified regional electricity market, with the expectation that such mechanisms would, over the medium to long term, ensure citizens of ECOWAS member states with stable and reliable electricity supply at competitive costs.
The 12th General Meeting of West African Power Pool in Africa was under the theme Regional Economic Market Ensuring West African Integration.
Well, some representatives at the General Assembly later shared some thoughts on achieving energy sufficiency in the sub-region.
Currently, Ghana has installed some solar energy plants, one in Navrongo, 2.5 megawatts, which was put there by the Volta River Authority, and another at Mankwazi, which is 20 megawatts, which was put there by a Chinese company called BSE. As we speak now, VRA has sent some people to Wa with the intention of setting up a 12 megawatt solar plant at Wa.
Country. In Nigeria, we have just raised about $1.57 billion to expand the transmission network. provide the necessary redundancy and create a grid stability in Nigeria. And this is what is taking place in all the other West African countries. WAP is supporting so many interconnection lines between various countries. And that is why going forward by 2019, all the 14 land countries of ECOWAS will be connected with electricity, will be interconnected. So Ghana can sell electricity to Cote d'Ivoire, Cote d'Ivoire can sell to Ghana, Ghana can sell to Nigeria. So this is what we are doing, and we are also working very hard to provide, do the synchronization to ensure that those supply can move easily without any problem. So this is what we are doing.
Well, that will mean that you have just about 2 years to put the infrastructure and everything together to make sure that these other landlocked countries can have access to electricity. Exactly what level are we to make sure that this interconnectivity exists? Yeah,
those countries that are involved are actually Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, and Guinea-Bissau. There's the issue of the commercial side, meaning the people who are taking the gas are finding it difficult to pay because of the issue that you raised, that we are not getting the commercial side right, meaning people who are even consuming the electricity are not paying, and therefore the utilities are finding it difficult to pay for the gas.
For today one, as you said, this is the closing of the meeting because we started since Monday, and this day is really the end. And what is going to be done today is to adopt the resolution that the technicians and the board have took. And I can tell you some of the resolution concern the modification of the article of agreement of WAP.
The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, says non-payment of taxes in the oil and gas sector continues to cost the nation a huge loss in terms of revenue. A recent research conducted by the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth to identify potential revenue losses along the oil and gas decision chain indicates between $200 and $700 million in tax revenue has not been captured this year. This, the minister explains, is due to a systematic failure with regards to the way government manages stuff, that is the country's tax issues. The minister was speaking in an interview after the inauguration of a 10-member multi-agency Petroleum Revenue Collection Committee to address challenges associated with tax revenue losses in the oil and gas sector.
The research in itself indicates that there may be as much as between $200 and $700 million that we may not be capturing. And I think if we are able to do that, it would ensure that we are competitive in terms of our taxation policy, at the same time get the type of revenue we need. If in future it has to come to that. Next year we're going to have a whole tax review, sort of a national tax review at every level, from domestic to multinational, and I think that would better inform us. Actually, the key thing for us, as you know, last year or this year, we abolished quite a number of taxes. I think one of the key things for us now is efficiency. And how do we ensure that at the very least we are getting what we are supposed to get before then determining whether to raise taxes or not.
Now, the country hopes to secure the entire amount targeted in the energy bond sale. This was after a struggle to secure all the 3.6 billion cedis for the 10-year ESLA PLC paper last week. But how critical is this fundraising exercise in helping stabilize the banking sector, which is said to be in crisis as a result of the failure to pay off the energy sector debts? There's more in this report.
Managers are closing the bond auction process today after it was forced to extend the fundraising exercise that should have closed last week. This was after it got 902 million Ghana cedis for the 10-year paper last Friday out of the 3.6 billion cedis targeted. Even though managers are optimistic of securing the amount, it is not clear for now whether the sponsors may review the 19.5% interest they were hoping to pay buyers of this bond. This is because most of the investors wanted to be paid about 20% development that led to the bond being undersubscribed. It is also not clear for now what will be managers' next line of action if they should fail to secure all the 3.6 billion Ghana cedis today, and how that could affect efforts to clear the 9.3 billion Ghana cedis energy sector debts. Most of the commercial banks that are exposed to these debts are seriously looking forward to the funds to help improve their financial situation. Joy Business understands some of them are in serious financial crisis, hoping that these funds could come in quickly to help improve their situation and prevent them from going down.
Well, we are looking ahead to next week. Government is expected to issue its first domestic dollar bond next Tuesday. Sources say it would be a three-year paper, and government could target almost $100 million. Moving on now, and the National Investment Bank has indicated its readiness to redirect its focus towards supporting government's industrialization program in 2018. Currently, NIB is a major lender to the manufacturing, building and construction and agro-processing sectors of the economy, as well as the service industry, while 70% of the bank's portfolio is made up of loans to the private sector. Speaking to Joy Business, after meeting with customers, Deputy Managing Director of NIB, Alfred George Thompson, said the bank is poised to support the policies government so far has rolled out.
Developmental banking. What we're looking at is, you know that government has talked a lot about the infrastructure development. They've talked about the one district, one factory, one dump village in the upper north side of the country. They've talked about other issues that they want to look to make sure that they expand the economy. And that is our focus that we are driving towards, because NIB was created as a developmental bank to help grow businesses, to help establish institutions, to help expand within the economy. And that is the focus that we are going to have from 2018 going forward. But that doesn't mean that we are going to disband or we are not going to look at the universal banking aspect. It will be there, and there will be the team that will be driving it. But the core mandate of being a developmental bank is what we are going to drive, and we are going to help in the growth of this country, because that is our focus, and that is why we're able to give birth to two banks that will drive the agri sector and will drive the universal banking aspect of the country. That was the UMB and the ADB. Our focus will make sure that we are going to help this government grow bigger and bigger every day. We are going to help businesses grow. We are going to help startups, and we are going to develop with them to make sure that they become the big giants that we expect companies to be.
Moving on, and some players in the banking and finance industry are impressing on Ghanaians the need to improve upon their savings habit. Experts say with a savings to GDP ratio of 12% compared to the over 50% in most Asian countries, the country is unable to accumulate resources to finance its development agenda. Speaking to Joy Business at the latest edition of the Busia Achedia promo, Head of Corporate Communications and Brand Management of Access Bank, Nanedu Tremanting, outlined some of the challenges that have accounted for poor savings culture in the country.
The culture of saving is very low, and this will be the fourth campaign to be able to rope in others who are in the outside the banking sector, a financial inclusion drive, that's how we call it, and also those who are underserved and are in this banking, those who are being banked, those who are underserved under this category. But the reason why we are doing this is also to help these ones to appreciate the need and to be able to save. I think it's a combination of factors. I think for some it's the lack of disposable income, and so they don't have much to put down to save. For others, they are not really in the bank segment, so they have the money, they keep it under their beds, they keep it in other places, and so they are not able to bring it to the bank. So we will not be able to see whether they are saving or not. But as far as it comes into the formal sector, then we can now know that these ones are saving. So I think it's a combination of a lot of factors.
Meanwhile, winner of the ultimate prize is encouraging Ghanaians to make savings a habit.
Savings is very important. First, not because of promotion, but it helps you, the individual. In time of need, you won't go to any money lender to borrow money for them to put a high interest on it. So if you save and you have money at the bank and there's problem for you, you just go to your bankers and you will draw the money because it is your own money. So for me, I feel that savings is very important because of our future. What I want to advise all Ghanaians is that it is very good to save. And it is very safe for you, the individual, your family and friends, to save. So I want to encourage anybody to save. It doesn't mean how much you have. The little that you save, if you keep on putting it in, if you keep on saving, even 10 cedis, 5 cedis, it will add up to make it big. Because little drops of water make it a big ocean. So I feel that savings is very good for our future.
In other news, some corporate stakeholders are pushing for better enforcement of laws to help curb corruption among businesses and in the economy. Health, Safety, Security and Environment Manager at APM, Frank Owusu, and spoke with Joy Business at the Alliance for Integrity Dialogue on Understanding and Doing Business with Integrity.
It is believed that the enforcement of laws is critical to help reduce commercial and reputational damage as a result of corruption in businesses and the economy as a whole. Highlighting the issues of integrity and corruption at the Alliance for Integrity Dialogue, Health, Safety, Security, Environment Manager at APM Ghana, Frank Owusu, stressed the need for enforcement of existing laws.
Ghana is a country that when it comes to laws, when it comes to policies, when it comes to requirements, we have them all. The issues we have with our country has to do with enforcement and also probably making people aware of the existence of these requirements and what the laws requires of institutions and organizations. So Ghana's situation is about enforcement. It's not about not having these laws, not having these policies. They are out there, and I can tell you what UK has, Ghana almost has and more. But the difference is about enforcement and how you require these institutions to be observant and going out and making sure that the institutions that are operating within those requirements and those confines do comply themselves to it or do obey and observe them as required for their existence and operations.
The dialogue brought together professionals in the field of compliance and business to address various issues associated with business development. Edwin Langma is a compliance consultant. He explains there's a need for awareness creation among employees if compliance laws have to work.
People need to understand what constitutes and do not constitute corruption. People need to understand the ambit of corruption, what can be interpreted as a corrupt act. I think the conversation needs to get started. We need to discuss these in our businesses. Businesses should carry this out to their employees. Employees should also understand that it behoves on all of us. If corruption is tackled, our society becomes better. For instance, we will not spend 10 times what we have to spend on, let's say, a public school or a school, because in doing that, we could have built, 10 schools for the deprived areas. So these are some of the causes of corruption. If we are able to tackle it as a society, if we are able to frown upon it, the country as a whole is turns out the better.
Sheila Tamaklu, Joy Business.
Chief Executive Officer of Logicel, Derek Denchi, has urged the adoption of technology by financial service providers, especially within the microfinance sector. This, he noted, will help reduce the incidence of fraud and poor monitoring in microfinance institutions, as has been the experience in the past. He spoke to Joy Business at the closed funding round for Logicel Ghana Limited in Accra.
Close funding round witnessed Isar Venture Capital invest an amount of $100,000 into the activities of fintech company Logicel. Isar Venture Capital is an investment vehicle that extends credit to small and medium-scale companies. In an interview with Joy Business, co-founder of Logicel, Farida Bedroy, advocated more funding for small and medium-scale tech companies as these firms are growing fast.
You want the economy to grow. Technology is a big part of the growth of the economy. Technology needs to be upskilled. We need to support our local industry. bringing foreign software into the country. We have capable people who are more than prepared to develop the solution that we need in this country. And believe me, the advantage of investing in local entrepreneurs is that the money stays in the country, that it doesn't get repatriated to other foreign institutions. Secondly, it is a great opportunity to promote jobs in this country.
Logicel Ghana Limited operates a microfinance banking software platform in Ghana, powering the operations of over 280 financial institutions in the country. Chief Executive of Logicel, Derek Denchi, said the use of technology in the financial sector will go a long way to improve credit availability.
Once we clean up the microfinance, most of them are lending very expensively because nobody knows what they're doing and they are borrowing so high. Once we're able to clean up, provide clean data, we know most investors who want to give more money to microfinance, and that will reduce their cost of borrowing, and that will impact their lending rates too as well. So indirectly, it's the final end person who is going to benefit from this infrastructure we're putting in place. Once it's clean up, once they can borrow cheaply, they can also lend cheaply. And we are also making sure that they also submit the necessary regulatory reports so that they will be monitored and supervised. We think about 60–70% of the unbanked need such services for microfinance companies.
On his part, managing partner for South Venture Capital, Dr. Mike Nkansa, stressed the need for more investments in the fast-growing tech space.
Africa has missed the boat on all the major technological revolutions, in the past 200 years, right? And this is one particular phase, the ICT revolution, which we can't really afford to be left behind in, okay? And so to the extent that the government can actually facilitate technology transfer and strategic investment, focused investment in that sector, I think it would go a long way. So the government actually has to step in, and this is something that if you look at a lot of the emerging economies in Asia, their governments have actually been a lot more active in encouraging and fostering more investment in that sector, because the private sector would always follow the lead of the government, and if the government does not step in with policy directives and incentives.
Sheila Tamaklu, Joy Business.
We are optimistic effective collaboration between government, the private sector can potentially address Ghana's housing needs, which currently stands at 1.7 million units as in terms of deficit. This and other challenges are what Multi TV's annual Habitat Fair, which opened in Kumasi today, seeks to address. President Pierre has been sampling the views of a section of the public on their expectations.
Goal 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals demands signatories ensure inclusive human settlement and management. This, however, seems far from being achieved, as observed by Dr. Divine Ahaji of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. The lecturer at the College of Settlement Planning is worried Ghana's pace towards inclusive society is too slow.
I don't think Ghana is prepared now to use cities or housing as a means of addressing Goal 11, especially building an inclusive society. Because over the years, government policy towards housing has focused on building houses for government workers who form just how many people are in the public sector as compared to those who are in the informal sector. It means that in terms of housing, government is doing very little to help the majority of Ghanaians who are poor and I think that is where I think that if SDG 11 is saying we should use housing to build an inclusive society, I think Ghana is failing as a country in that direction.
Same Amegaibo is secretary of the Executive Council of Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, GRIDA. He believes there is no effective collaboration between private sector and government.
Infrastructure, provisions, road, electricity, water, and those stuff which also add up the cost to the developer are things that are actually the responsibility of government.
We had to cut into that to bring you our interview of the day. It's with the former chief executive of the Bui Power Authority, Jabesh Emisa Arthur. He's been speaking on power efficiency.
Interview of the day.
Well, the cost of generation really has to come down. Because the numbers we are talking about now, some of the great ideas we have for regional cooperation cannot happen with those numbers. We have to drive the cost down. And as you know, for most of us are now using thermal, and 75–80% of the cost comes from fuel. So the fuel sources are probably one of the targets one should look at. How we procure fuel at more competitive prices will determine about 3/4 of the cost. The other part is to look at how the other infrastructure, the plants themselves and the transmission interconnection, and make sure they are cost effective, because the export or import by any country depends on the price competition. And once the region is totally connected, competition will change from just not what is available, but competition on the basis of price. And we have to position ourselves to be ready to compete in the rest of the sub-region according to price.
Mr. Arthur, I know Ghana has had a zone.
Interview of the day.
And that's it for Business Live for this week, my friends. But there's always plenty more business stories for you on our website. That is myjoyonline.com/business. Catch up on all the stories and the videos just in case you missed any of our bulletins. My name is Daryl Carr. I'll see you next week.